there, it's Paulie here. Haha, cheers. So, a lot of us began doing miniatures gaming with playing fantasy games, particularly games like Warhammer. Now, there's a fancy set of rules, which I will look at later, called Kings of War. And Kings of War was essentially designed by some guys who were rather pissed off at some of the way Warhammer rules were designed to basically be very expensive, and they changed their editions and would make your armies obsolete, and the rules weren't particularly good, etc. So these same guys, however, brought out a historical set of rules, Kings of War Historical. Now, I've been having a look through them, and actually it's an interesting game. This is, again, a great entry-level game for people who might be interested in trying historical miniatures, particularly if you've come from an environment of fantasy miniatures. It's actually a nifty little set of rules. They're very clear. They're relatively simple. You get a good game out of them. So, this is an element-based game. What that means is that you'll be playing with rectangular bases which have a set number of miniatures on them. You don't remove individual miniatures. The element moves as an actual game piece. It will take casualties and effects which will be tracked with a marker beside it, and if the unit is destroyed, you remove the whole base. So, now, how this game works, it is a you go, I go system. So one person does all of their movement and wackily all of their combat without taking any back in return, and then the next person gets a go. Okay, you get a game. This is an artificiality which I'm not that happy with. I have to say, it's not that great an idea, but it's their idea and it works. So they've got some quite clear concepts for movement. What you're doing is each unit is listed for its movement in inches. It's listed for its melee number. It rolls d6 and it needs that number or higher to score a hit. It's got a missile combat number. If it has missiles like bows or javelins or whatever, same. It's the number or higher on a d6 it needs for a hit. There are different sizes of unit. So there's like a troop, which is just like one little rank of miniatures. There's it's like a regiment or something, which is like, about 10 miniatures, 2 ranks of 5. There's a deeper one, which is 4 ranks, and there's like a big honkin' great big unit. Each of these will roll a different number of dice when it's firing or in melee. They've also got a defense number, because this has kind of come from that whole Warhammer idea where they like lots of dice bouncing across the table. And all right, that's kind of fun. Whoosh, here we go. Yay, I got 12 dice. Yahoo. So when I attack, I roll a number of dice equal to my attack value, which varies depending on the size of the unit. And then I have to score my melee number, say, or my missile number or higher. Those are hit. We take those dice aside. And then I have to roll higher than my target's defense number. So heavily armored troops and so on are harder to damage than guys who don't have any armor, etc. The result is a number which is recorded. You can put a 20-sided dice or a 10-sided dice behind a unit, and that just records a number of casualties it's got. And where these are important is that you've got morale tests. They call them nerve tests. Each unit has 2 numbers. You roll 2 dice, and you add to it the number of casualties that the units had on it. And then you check. If that reaches the waver number of the unit, that unit is wavering. It's now no longer so aggressive. It can't move towards the enemy and so on. It can't charge into contact. If it rolls really high, that is rout, and the unit's then effectively removed from the game. It routs off. So you move, you come into contact, you do all of your damage, and then do all the morale tests that result from your firing and your movement. Then the other guy gets their turn, and you go back and forth. So it is a bit artificial in that 2 units don't meet, you both kind of mutually take casualties. All right, in their minds are saying, yeah, but it's usually one lot smashing into another, and then the others kind of gather together and counterattack. And all right, so they have a internal movie playing in their heads, which lets us make sense, and that's all fine. Very clearly, people are enjoying these rules, and particularly players that have come over from fantasy. So, you know, obviously they're having a good time with it. It's working to make a game, so Lord bless them. It's not a brilliant simulationist type of game, but it is an excellently playable type of game. So, you have a points budget from which to purchase your armies, and everything costs you a set number of points. Now, for the historical game, what they've done is they've set up a generic sort of basic list, and they've said, these are what generic spearsmen look like. These are what heavier armed spearsmen look like. These are what kind of tribal warriors look like. These are what heavier armed ones look like. These are what impact cavalry would look like. These are a heavier one. These are ballistas. These are stone throwers. These are auxiliaries. These are light infantry. These are horse archers. Yeah, they've got all the generic types in there. Then they've gone and done like a series of just little lists of different nations and periods, and they've said each of these, here are the troops specific to that particular nation that you can take. You can also kind of buy things from the general list, but sometimes there's a modification. They'll be slightly different. So you might want to purchase Huns. All right, well, Huns can purchase normal light cavalry and all this sort of stuff from the generic list. You can also buy Hunnic light cavalry, which are a little bit nastier in combat, etc., etc., but obviously cost you more points. Likewise, you might be successor Macedonian, and all right, you can buy pikemen from the generic list. You can also buy a single unit of Argaraspid or companion elite pikes. Here's what that unit looks like. It's elite. Now, they've put these tags on, they've given sort of special abilities. This is beloved of fantasy miniatures games. You've got your base level rules, and then there are special abilities you can attach to troops that let them do things. In this historical set, these are all perfectly sensible. Some units are nimbler. They are faster, or able to turn and maneuver more. Some ignore the effects of difficult terrain because they're like troops like auxiliaries and some of the tribal infantry that can scatter out through woods and marshes and that sort of stuff really, really easily. Some of these guys are, you know, quite stubborn. Some of them are renowned for fanatical charges. Some of them are fanatics. Some of them are elite. You know, they have like higher skills and higher morale, etc., etc., etc. There are also individuals. You can purchase individual figures. These tend to be leaders and heroes and things like that. And these have their own list of special powers, and they can be used for things. So some of those things might be, this might be a guy that can rally the troops. So what he does is he effectively, you can attach him to a unit, and if the unit's not taking any more damage, he can basically heal casualty damage on that troop. He brings its cohesion back. You know, remember lads, you type up once, blah blah, squeak squeak, come forward, yahoo. So you can rally the troops with those sorts of guys. Some of them are, you can attach, they give like troops a bonus when they charge into contact, etc. So you've got individuals. There are rules in there because these have come from fancy rules that are used to having like monsters and individual heroes and whatever. It's nice to see a lot of miniatures rules for ancients and so on tend not to have many rules about what happens if a general figure goes past and the enemy cavalry run over him. These rules definitely have rules for that. You know, beep beep squish. Careful about leaving single individuals standing around in the middle of the battlefield when, you know, 200 guys on horseback go thundering past. Now, a funny thing is that there isn't a specific kind of end game where when you take a certain amount of casualties, your morale kind of collapses and the army goes off. What they do have is sort of a series of scenarios in the back and a very good series of scenarios where you roll to see what sort of game it's going to be. It can be attackers and defenders, immediate engagements, it can be looting expeditions, it can be hill defense, all kinds of interesting things. But it sort of says the basic one is you do 6 turns, and at the end of that you kind of, each type of scenario has its own victory conditions that you count up. And then it says you might wish to play a longer game, so you might want to add more turns to it. But their basic one is each side does 6 turns. So, okay, you know, that's fairly fairly quick, snappy sort of. You've got it to a conclusion, all right, yeah. But yeah, you certainly might want to play a longer game. So the end game comes from number of turns, not from number of casualties. But winner or loser is going to be generally who basically did more damage and took less damage doing it. Kings of War has always been designed with the idea that it's not tied to any specific miniatures ranges, because obviously the fantasy end of this was done where these guys really hated the fact that Warhammer was done where you had to buy their figures, and if you didn't buy the new figure that had the special card in it, they had the special, you know, bonuses for that special figure, you know, so they're very clear these are for any damn set of miniatures that you want. They've also put mythic characters and so on in the back of it, so they've said if you wish you can add some mythical stuff. This isn't like the full fantasy rules, but they have said if you wanted to do a medieval army and add a dragon, or add like a simple version of their fantasy games, wizards or so on in it, here's the rules for that. If you wanted to have like some sort of hideous beast or something like that, here are the rules for it. So, you know, it's kind of neat. And on that basis, that would be a way of doing something like Battle of the Five Armies, you know, Tolkien-esque kind of things, returning to essentially the very beginnings of miniatures wargaming, things like the Hyperborea campaign and the Middle-earth campaigns played in WRG days back in like 1969 and 70. So again, I've got some simple magical rules and mythical units and so on in here if you wished to do that. Is it a good game? Look, real solid ancients period players, that kind of I go you go thing, they might find an irritating because it isn't simulationist. But like I said, there's 2 types of game really. There's how closely are you trying to simulate a real event, and how playable a game exercise you're trying to make. These guys have gone full, let's make a playable game exercise. This obviously works an I go you go thing. I can see the tactical subtleties, because you can't charge through your own troops, but you can move through your own troops and retreat through them. So to my mind, this is a game where you want reserves, because you want to like put some guys out that the other guy's going to be tempted to charge into, and then you're going to try and kind of replace the lines, bring in fresh guys, and you know, and I can see the tactical game in there. And very obviously you're going to want like missile troops to sort of put some casualties and disrupt guys that you're planning on going into melee with. Is going to make it easier for those morale rolls. If you've chipped him down a little, it's going to, you know, add to your dice rolls to try and bust his morale and everything. So look, I think it's a good game. It seems to be very playable. Everything they've done in here is for clarity, simplicity, and removing any arguments. There are no rules here that are open to multiple interpretations. There are no rules here that really can cause argument. They've put very specific things saying all of your units must be set up with, you know, a space between them to make it obvious that they're separate units. Unless you're charging into contact with someone, you stop always an inch from them. If you move into contact with another unit charging, you kind of slide yourself to kind of meet up as best with your opponent as you can. If this is going to push you into another unit in a way that might interfere with it, just shuffle everyone around a bit to make the make the space. Shuffle everyone an inch or 2. And if that's going to cause too much disruption, to hell with it. You know, you charge together and just figure out that combat. You know, it's like, so it's good, cheerful, simple, clear, They're very happy to like move units about a little bit just for clarity after contact has happened, just to make sure everyone knows where they are and what they're doing. They got so it removes arguments. So clearly these were done by people who've been exposed to some unfriendly rules in the past and wanted a playable game, a friendly game, a game that was going to give you some clear results, have some good tactics and some fun. So I think the core of these rules is fun. That's not a bad thing to have as the basis of a set of games rules that you're going to play with your friends. Look, I recommend you take a look at them. It's not a bad idea, particularly if you like wanted to start off doing historical miniatures and didn't feel like dealing with these big tangled rule sets with 1,000 pages and lots of ifs and thens and if this then that. So these are much clearer and much simpler, and you'll get some miniatures, you'll paint them, you'll move them around, you'll have a game, you'll have a great time, and you'll probably quite easily get friends to jump in and play it with you. So again, a nice entry-level set for historical gamers. But look, I'm a long experienced miniatures gamer. I've had a couple of games of this, and I've actually really enjoyed it. It's been great fun. Like I said, not brilliantly simulationist. So there is a thing that comes through in a lot of fantasy games where how tough something is kind of important. Like, that's a tough guy. I'll put him on a horse. He's even tougher. The vulnerabilities of cavalry haven't appeared. So the fact that these guys are particularly vulnerable to being, absolutely destroyed if you get them into, woods and rough going and so on, doesn't really come through. But on the other hand, you're probably not going to put them in there because the rules tell you that it screws up your charges and, you can't get the benefits of the faster movement from the horses. So, it all works out. I think it gets a good game out of it. So definitely worth looking at. As I said, great entry-level game and a great fun game for more experienced players that really need a holiday from the rules lawyership and the endless niggle of it's 1 millimeter out, etc. Worth taking a look at. I've actually ordered the fantasy version because I really want to see it because I like the cut of their jib. I want to check it out. It looks like it's been made with a certain amount of fun and verve. So I will be taking a look at that later on. But meanwhile, Kings of War Historical, definitely worth a look. Anyway, keep the dice rolling, keep playing games, keep having fun playing the games, and if you like the reviews, by all means, subscribe, find me on Patreon. Links to all of my novels and my own games and so on are down there in the comments section. Cheers! Ding!